The next type of connective tissue we will cover is cartilage. There are three different kinds of cartilage: hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, and elastic cartilage. Now, each of these three different types is characterized by different properties within the extracellular matrix. Within all of these different types of cartilage, there are chondrocytes. Chondro meaning cartilage, cyte meaning maintaining cells. These cells are located within the extracellular matrix, and they're located within spaces within the cartilage called lacunae. The cartilage itself is actually made up of collagen as well as what we call ground substance. Now, ground substance really is proteoglycans and hyaluronic acid. The function of these molecules, the ground substance, are to trap large amounts of water, and this will actually allow the tissue to be compressed or be stretched, and it will actually have the ability to stretch back because as we compress it, it will actually squish some of that water out just like a sponge, and then as we relieve any pressure, it will actually spring back to the original shape as it reabsorbs that water. Now, cartilage is also avascular, meaning it has no blood supply. The downfall of this is that it actually heals very slowly, and we'll see this inside of joints or in the intervertebral discs as the recovery time period is pretty extended. Now, there's also no direct nerve supply to cartilage, and so this will actually mean that cartilage itself is not pain sensitive. The only exception to that is this outer layer here we mentioned here at the bottom, the perichondrium. The perichondrium is surrounding the outside of cartilage, and it is a dense, irregular connective tissue that helps to hold the cartilage together. This actually does have nerve supply, and so the outer layers, especially on the periphery of cartilage, will be pain sensitive. Now, our first type is hyaline cartilage. Hyaline cartilage is made up of, again, collagen fibers that are evenly distributed, so we actually can't see individual collagen fibers, and you can see it looks nice and smooth through here. So this pink substance in here is mostly collagen, but it also has a ton of proteoglycan matrix. Again, the proteoglycan matrix is all about absorbing water, and so it provides some of its resiliency or really shock absorption, but it also will help provide a liquid nature to the surface, decreasing friction between ends of bones. So the places where we see it, we can see here up in the top right, is the ends of long bones. So here's our femur, our thigh bone. Down here is the tibia. As they come together, we have a layer of hyaline cartilage on the femur, a layer of hyaline cartilage on the tibia. Out here is the patella, or the kneecap, and we also have a layer of hyaline cartilage on the backside of the kneecap where it fits into the femoral side. Again, this all it does is decrease its friction and provide some resiliency on the surface of the bones. Now, we also see hyaline cartilage forming other structures like the trachea, bronchi, of the airways, but also the rib cartilage. This is going to provide these areas an ability to hold open an area and provide some flexibility to it. So in terms of the trachea, the main airway coming down into the lungs, it'll have a hyaline cartilage ring that will actually surround this airway, allowing for the airway to stay open during inhale as well as exhale. The rib cartilage, everything from mid-nipple line towards the sternum or the breastbone, will actually be made of cartilage instead of bone. The cartilage all the way around from the lateral aspect all the way around to the posterior aspect of the ribs is actually all bone. This again will provide some flexibility to the ribs as we inhale and exhale as well. The nose, same sort of thing, some flexibility for the external visible part of the nose to actually be able to move and yet provide some structure to it that we can actually see as the shape of our nose. The last thing that we see hyaline cartilage in are children's bones, and we haven't talked about this yet, but there is endochondral bone formation. And this is actually where the kids' bones, the vast majority of our long bones, will actually be formed out of hyaline cartilage itself, making children's bones the ability to grow at specific growth plates, but also have them have a little bit more flexibility as they begin to stand and walk. The functions of hyaline cartilage is, again, that smooth surface for joint articulations. We also will provide the flexibility, but also forms the skeleton and also helps us increase in bone length. Now, fibrocartilage is a new type of cartilage. This is actually where we have a lot higher percentage of collagen fibers, and they're a lot thicker and more evenly distributed throughout the proteoglycan matrix. If we look here in the upper left-hand corner, there are collagen fibers that we can actually see running through this cartilage here, whereas in the hyaline cartilage, we couldn't make out individual fibers. Again, we see the chondrocytes in here. They're located within a space called the lacunae. Okay, you can actually kind of see the space here. Now, the fibrocartilage is located in specific joints. One of the more common joints we see it is in the intervertebral disc. So we haven't looked at spine yet, but here is our vertebra and a vertebra, and in between we actually have an intervertebral disc. The intervertebral disc is actually going to function mostly as a shock absorber. Now, the great thing about this intervertebral disc, and because it has these really strong collagen fibers that we can actually see, it is going to resist stretch in multiple different directions. So as we bend, twist, lean forwards, lean backwards, we'll actually have to be able to not only compress the area, just like we did with hyaline cartilage, but also stretch it and pull it apart. And so this will provide a great deal of strength as we put a lot of pressure onto these joints. Now, other areas where we see this fibrocartilage are places like the knee meniscus. So between the tibia and the femur is the thigh bone, the tibia is the lower leg bone, we'll have a shock absorber. And this shock absorber will actually be called the meniscus, and it'll have a way to improve the depth and structure of the knee, but it also cushions between the two ends of the bones and resists some of these small twisting and bending motions, so we improve our flexibility. We also have a disc in the jaw, and the jaw is an interesting joint in the fact that it has to have the ability to open, but it also will have the ability of us to compress the joint as we chew. And so the jaw disc will actually help to decrease the impact as we bite down onto a tougher substance. Elastic cartilage is made up of hyaline cartilage, but now we add a lot more elastic fibers within here. So we actually do have mostly collagen fibers that, just like hyaline cartilage, we can't make out individual fibers here, but with the elastic fibers, we can actually see individual very thin fibers running through it, and these are the elastin. These will give this tissue structure again from the collagen fibers, but elasticity from the elastic fibers. Now again, we also have the proteoglycans trapped. These are again going to allow us to compress it, and then it'll return to its original shape based on the ability of these water to leave the cartilage and then return to it very quickly. Some common places that we actually see this are in the external ears. So the ears that we can actually see here are the lobes of the ears, what we call the auricle. All this out here is mostly going to be elastic cartilage. We can have the ability to bend it, twist it, lay on it, and as soon as we relieve pressure again, it bounces back to its original shape. We haven't learned about the epiglottis yet, but it is actually a structure that covers our airway during swallowing. So as we swallow food or as we swallow water, this epiglottis will actually fold forward and cover the airway and funnel all the food directly towards our esophagus, our main food tube heading towards the stomach. And so the flexibility of this that will fold and come back every time we swallow will give its properties that we see in the elastic cartilage. Now we also see it in our auditory tubes that connect the back of our throat to our ears. This allows us to have an airway that will actually collapse as we don't need air exchanging between the ear and the back of the throat, but it also has the ability to stretch open as we change pressure within the ears. So again, the elastic cartilage provides rigidity, but with some elastic properties to help bounce it back to its original shape. Our next level of connective tissue is bone. Now, bone, again, is going to be a structural type of connective tissue. It is going to be a very hard type of connective tissue with living cells within it that are actually made of osteocytes. Remember, osteo means bone, cyte means cell, or maintaining cell. These osteocytes are going to be located in lacunae, and lacunae, again, are just little holes within the matrix itself. So one of the unique things about bone is that its matrix is made up of collagen fibers that are organic, just like we've seen in all the rest of the connective tissues. But now we add an inorganic portion, what we call hydroxyapatite or calcium hydroxyapatite. Calcium hydroxyapatite is really just calcium and phosphate. This is going to give us a very rigid sort of structure by providing a hard, rigid material to build upon. So if we look at bone as essentially an example would be reinforced concrete, we have collagen fibers that are actually going to be similar to rebar or to wire put within a reinforced concrete, and the hydroxyapatite, which is going to be similar to the cement that we pour on top of it. Now, the collagen is going to provide some flexibility to it, so it has the ability to at least lightly flex. The hydroxyapatite is going to provide the rigidity. So we add a little bit of flexibility, but also rigidity to the structure so that we make our bones more resilient. Now we have two different types of bone. We have spongy bone, which is going to be only present really in the center of bones and really only in ends of long bones and in some of our smaller, irregular shaped bones. And then we're going to have compact bone, and compact bone forms the harder outer surfaces of bones. First, let's look at compact bone. Compact bone is going to be made up of essentially a single structure here packed multiples at a time. Here's going to be another one of these same things, same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. This structure right here is known as an osteon. We'll look at that more in the bone section. But within this, we again have this hard hydroxyapatite matrix that is made of collagen as well as the calcium and phosphate, and it is laid down actually in layers. So we can kind of see concentric circles going around and around and around and around our central canal. This central canal is actually a blood vessel, so we're carrying the nutrients through this central portion. The cells themselves are located within the lacunae. These are the osteocytes here. Running from the central canal where there's blood, we are actually going to have little tiny canals called canaliculi that are actually going to carry nutrients from the central canal all the way to our osteocytes located within those lacunae. Again, the compact bone is really only present on the outer surfaces of bone, and we can follow right along the outer surface of what amounts to the femur here. Very thick layer of compact bone on the outside. You can actually see the spongy bone on the inside here. The function of compact bone is to provide a solid outer shell that is going to provide the vast majority of the strength and support for our compact bones. Within the center of the core where we're going to have our spongy bones, some areas we're not going to have much spongy bone. And this is where our medullary cavity actually is. And you can actually see the spongy bone up in here, and it looks like little meshwork through the center. So this is what spongy bone looks like, and it's actually, again, we'll have it a calcium hydroxyapatite and collagen matrix. We still have osteocytes present within a lacunae here, osteocyte within a lacunae, but we don't have those concentric circles, layers of bony matrix being laid down. Instead, we have it laid down in these sheets here, and these are actually called trabeculae. So if you looked at here where the spongy bone actually lies, that meshwork within the center, or lacework, are these trabeculae that are actually present. And these will form in areas at the ends of long bones and provide a significant amount of structural strength without adding much weight. And so it ends up getting us a lot of space as well. And this area in here, all the white, is actually a space that we're going to know as the bone marrow. And this is where blood cells are going to be formed. Now, a lot of this spongy bone is going to be at the inside of bones, but we see a lot in the skull, vertebra, sternum, pelvis, but we also see it at the ends of long bones. So the femur, the thigh bone, is an example of a long bone, so we're going to see it here at the proximal end, but we'll also see it down at the very bottom at the distal end as well, and we'll see this throughout the rest of the skeleton. And again, this is helping to provide some strength and support, but we, again, don't want the entire bone to be compact bone because then it would be very, very heavy. Our next type of connective tissue is fluid, and it is blood. Blood is made up of cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, but it actually has a fluid matrix. So if we look up here, all this space between the cells, all the white, is actually a fluid matrix, what we call plasma. And really it's just water, some electrolytes, some sugars, and then it actually will have little amounts of protein that we really can't see within here. The cells, again, we have red blood cells, these cells here. We have white blood cells, and then we have platelets. Now, the blood itself is actually moving through blood vessels that go through the heart. Arteries are going away from the heart, veins are coming back to the heart, and they're carrying nutrients and waste products to and from other parts of the body. The function of blood is really to carry nutrients around. So it carries oxygen and then it returns carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a waste product. We'll carry hormones around the rest of the body, but we'll also carry nutrients such as sugars, fats, proteins to areas where we'll actually be able to then build cells or build muscles or build other structures that we need. Now, we also have immunity. Immunity is done by white blood cells, and these cells are actually very much like Pac-Man. They go around and they actually gobble up or eat infectious material. Sometimes it is virus-infected cells or fungus, or sometimes it's actually a bacteria as well. Now, we also can control the temperature via blood. The liquid portion of blood is a great retainer or mover of heat. And so as we shuttle more blood to an area, we have the ability to carry heat to that area or carry heat away from that area, depending on where we send that blood. Now, we also have a specialized type of connective tissue called hemopoietic tissue. Hemopoietic tissue is present within the bone marrow. So if we look here again at the bone, okay, we had the compact bone on the outside, the periphery. We have spongy bone, which is the actual structure within here, the trabeculae, the meshwork. In between each of those meshworks, we have hemopoietic tissue. Hemopoietic tissues are forming blood cells. So if we look here and here, we actually have a couple of different cells that are actually going to become red blood cells. Red blood cells are known as erythrocytes. Because these are forming red blood cells, they are known as erythroblast. Erythroblast, erythro means red blood cell, and blast means making. Now, we also store a lot of fat within the bone marrow. So this is fat in here, this is fat in here. The fat is in higher concentrations in areas in the center of long bones, whereas these red blood cell forming cells and also white blood cell forming cells are in higher proportion within what we know as the red marrow. So really what we're looking at here is the red marrow. The hemopoietic portion form these red blood cells, but they also form white blood cells. And these guys right in here are immature white blood cells. They're not ready to go out into the periphery yet because they're actually a little too large, too much cytoplasm, but they also haven't differentiated all of them into their functional counterparts. The yellow marrow down in here, again in the center of long bones, really is all about storing fats or lipids. And so this is an energy storage area for utilization as we form these cells up in here. So it provides our energy network. This is a video I want you to watch, but it just covers the overview of the connective tissues that we've covered today.